Well, hey, good morning once again, and so great to be with you today. How would that video? Nothing like some lighthearted existential questions to get the blood flowing on a long weekend, right? But just to kind of take a step back, maybe take this from a different angle. How about let's ask this question here? What if I were to ask you this? What's on your 5-year wish list? Like if you were to project to the next 5 years, like what would you put on your wish list? Maybe for some of you, your immediate thought is like 5 years? I'm thinking visit every single Disney park in the whole world. Like I could have a lot of fun in the next 5 years. Maybe that's where your thought goes. Maybe for some of you, you're like, nope, the next 5 years, I'm gonna be the CEO of my company that I work at. I'm a hard worker, I'm driven, I got goals, I'm gonna make it happen. Maybe others of you are like, 5 years, like who knows? I mean, we live in a pretty unstable world right now. Like, I'm just gonna go with the flow. Like, I don't normally even plan 5 days out, let alone 5 years out. And maybe that's some of you. Maybe others, you got it pretty down pat. You know, step 1, get in a relationship. Step 2, engagement. Step 3, marriage. Step 4, baby number 1. Right? You know exactly your 5-year plan. But does a question like this, does this excite you? Does this fun for you? Do you find it to be a little overwhelming? Maybe a question like this reveals to you how little time you spend thinking about this kind of thing. But now, what if we were to narrow it back into a bit more of the motivation behind a question like this? And let me ask you this question. Do you want your life to be meaningful? Now, I'm being a little facetious here. We don't need a scale from nope to somewhat to kinda to yes, right? Our answers are all the same on this. Our answer is yes, right? The room may have been divided on the 5-year wish list question, but when it comes to a question like this, we all say yes, right? Or maybe it resonates different if I ask it this way. Do you want your life to make a difference? Again, yes, right? Or how about this? Do you want to make a positive impact? Of course, all of us would say yes. When we think about what our life looks like, regardless of the specifics of what might happen, we want to live lives that make an impact, that make a difference. And all these questions really come down to this one word right here. Purpose. That's what we're talking about. We want to live lives of purpose. And the Bible, scriptures are just full of imperatives about living lives with purpose, about living with intention, making the most of our time on earth. And yet, we don't need the Bible to tell us that in order for us to know that that's true, right? There's something inside of all of us that we have this desire to create meaning in our lives, to live purposefully, to live with intention, right? And yet, if that's the case, if upon self-reflection, we all have this innate purpose-desiring nature, why do we need these imperatives? Why do we need to be reminded? Why do we need to be encouraged to live intentionally, to make the most, to make sure our decisions are purposeful? Well, I think it's because all of us are prone to coasting. We're prone to wandering a little bit in life and forgetting about that, right? And so let me ask you this question. Are you coasting, wandering, aimless, unfocused? Does any of this describe you a little bit? Like, of course you want to be purposeful. Of course you want to be intentional, but are you? Or are there some ways, some areas of your life where you're actually wandering? You're a little bit unfocused, right? Have we drifted, right? Or maybe for some of you, this question isn't resonating with you because you're like aimless, unfocused. Like, I wish I had the opportunity to be a little bit aimless in my life, because you're in a season of your life where you are very focused because of the season you're in. And so let me ask, for some of you, let me ask this other question then. Are you focused only on here and now? And what I mean by that, for some of you, you're in a season of life where you're like 5 years from now, you got little kids around the house maybe, and you're like 5 years, man, I got 5 minutes. I can either have a nap or have a shower because I don't have time for both, right? You're just trying to survive this season, and all your focus is on that, right? Or maybe you're in school and all your focus is on school. What I do right now, right here in this season is all that matters. So I don't have time to think about anything but that. Or you've just finished school, and what you decide about your career, where you decide to work, you realize this is too important to even be thinking about anything else. Or maybe you're in marriage mode, or maybe it's a health situation that you're dealing with, or someone that you care about is dealing with, that doesn't allow you to think about anything in the future, anything but the here and now. And so if this is you, if this is a season that you're in, No judgment, of course. But let me ask you, for everyone in this room, whether this question or the previous question, let me ask you another one. What would it look like to have focus beyond now? To move from wandering to purpose? Because we're unlikely to end up in the right place without a vision, without purposeful movement toward the right place, right? What would it look like to leave a legacy that we want to leave? Like what would that look like? Maybe relationally, maybe professionally, maybe spiritually. That instead of wandering, to have direction. Because when we're aimed at nothing, that's what we get, right? When we live aimlessly, we don't end up anywhere on purpose. Now, amazingly, this is exactly where the people of Israel found themselves a few thousand years ago. And they're literally wandering. And you may have heard this story before. The people of Israel, they've been freed from slavery. Moses, through Moses has freed them from slavery, and God's leading them toward this place called the Promised Land. This new and better place, this land that's described as flowing with milk and honey, meaning it's amazing. It's everything that you could ever dream of and more. And so God's leading them to this place, and so through Moses leading these people, he sends out 12 men to scout out the land, to spy out the land, to figure out what this is going to look like. And so these guys, they come back after 40 days of scouting it out, and Moses asks, so what'd you see? And they're like, it's everything that God said it was. It's flowing with milk and honey. It's this amazing land, but sorry, Moses, but these people there, they're giants. Like, these people are way bigger than us. These dudes, they got weaponry. They got these big armies. Unfortunately, the news is we're not going to go. We can't go and take this land. That's what the 10 of these guys conclude. There's 2 other guys, there's Caleb and Joshua, and they're like, no, it's exactly what God said it was, and God said he would lead us into this land. So why would we not trust God? Why would we not take this land? But the fear of the 10 trump the faith of the 2. And so God has this vision for them to enter the promised land that they never take hold of. And they continue wandering for 40 more years. And so fast forward through those 40 years, and Moses is dying. And not only is this whole generation of people, but Moses, all these people that were supposed to enter the promised land, they're dying off. And so Moses is kind of passing on the baton to one of those 2 spies that said, no, let's go take it, Joshua. And so Joshua is going to become the leader of the people of Israel. And so here's how this all went down. This is in the book of Joshua, chapter 1. It says, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give them to the Israelites. And so these people who have been, many of them born like during the wandering years, they're like, what? No more wandering? Like, we're actually going to take this promised land we've been hearing about? And God says this, I will give you every place where you set your foot as I promised Moses. So God's saying, the thing I promised Moses, I'm giving you the exact same promise. And then God gets specific and he shows him, what this territory is going to look like. He says, your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country, to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. And so this is basically the land of Canaan, very similar to modern day Israel, not quite exactly, but God's saying, look, I'm showing you the borders. This is the vision. This is what it's going to look like. This is what I have in mind for you. And what we learn from this story is that if you're going to go from wandering to purpose, it starts with vision. It starts with vision. And for our purposes today, when I talk about vision, this is what I'm talking about. Vision is a preferred future, right? And God's saying, look, here's the preferred future. This is the future that I have in mind for you, that I have in store for you. It's not wandering in the wilderness. That's not my will for you. I've got something so much better for you. This is my vision for your future. The next thing God says is so important. He says, no one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. How encouraging, right? How empowering that must have been to hear that God's never going to abandon Joshua, right? What would you do if you knew without a shadow of a doubt that God would be with you, that he would never forsake you. That's what God's doing here to Joshua. He's instilling this in him, making sure that he has no reason to be afraid, that he's going to overcome his fears and his doubts because he knows this truth. And so the first step, for us is the same as it was for Joshua. Again, that's to clarify the vision. If we want to move from wandering to purpose, step one, clarify the vision. Figure out your preferred future. What do you hope is going to happen down the road? What would success look like for you? I mean, if you were to come up with some examples, let's say, there's something to do with your vision for your physical health, that you realize that your future could hold a more physically healthy version of yourself. Well, clarify, what does that look like? Is that a number of pounds? Is that going down 1 t-shirt size, 2 t-shirt size? Clarify, what exactly does that look like for you to be in a healthier place? What is that vision or financial stability? What's that number? You want to raise kids that turn out a certain way. What are the specific values that you're going to need to instill into them in order to arrive at that vision, right? Clarify the vision, because clear vision provides direction for our lives. When we have clear vision, everything else clears up. The decisions that we need to make become so much more clear. The direction we need to go becomes so much more clear. And so often, we never know if we've arrived at our goal because we don't have this clear vision, right? And we don't even necessarily know if are we even moving closer toward the goal. But clarity changes that. Maybe this conversation is making you feel a little bit overwhelmed. This sounds good, but am I supposed to know what my future holds? Am I supposed to know what my vision is supposed to be for my future? Well, let me give you a few questions that I like to ask myself. I've asked myself many times to kind of just help me stay on track when it comes to this kind of topic. The first question is this: what breaks your heart? What keeps you up at night? What are those things that you're so passionate about? What makes you angry? Things that are wrong with the world that you just want to fix, things that are just driving you nuts. What breaks your heart? That's a good indicator. Next question is this: what gifts has God given you? How has God blessed you? How has he made you with specific things that you're good at? And if you can't come up with any, ask people who love you, who care about you. They'll be able to tell you an answer to this question. It's not an accident that you're good at those things. How has God blessed you? And along the same lines, how has God wired you? How are you wired? What's your temperament? What's your personality? What's the innate why behind the things that you do, right? So often we're kind of frustrated or drained, and we're doing things that we're spinning our wheels, but perhaps God's vision for your future is not those things that are so frustrating, because God has wired you a certain way. And the last question is this: how can you leverage your influence? I think often we think of a question like this and our thoughts become kind of lofty and big, right? But perhaps the vision that God has for you, much of it takes place in your current context where you already are. Just using your influence with the people who are already around you, your coworkers, your classmates, your kids, your neighbors, your friends. How can you leverage the influence you have in the places where you already are? And maybe you've heard the question, asked or wrestled with the question who are you, right? Who do you think you are? But let me ask you a fun little question that kind of sums up these questions, and that's this: why do you think you are? Why? Why do you think you are? You are the only human being on the planet who has ever been made just like you. You are a unique creation. Why? Why did God create you so uniquely? Why did God make you the way he made you? The why behind that has the ability to bring clarity. And the truth is that you were created on purpose, for a purpose. God, the why behind you, it's purposeful. God made you the way he made you, very purposefully. He made you on purpose for a purpose. And maybe if you're a follower of Jesus, you've asked the question, you've thought, well, God, what is your specific will for my life? What should I do? But God's smart enough not to answer that question, because he knows if he just tells you what to do, you'll stop trusting him and you'll just go do it, right? And also, I think it's because he knows he's actually already revealed enough of his will for you to go on. For one example, we see this in Paul's letter to the church in Ephesus. Paul says this, we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. There are good specific things that God has made for us to do. And that could be a lot of different things, but let's get even more specific here. We learn part of our God's will from one of the last things Jesus ever said before leaving the earth. Jesus tells us something important about our will. Specifically, he says this, go and make disciples. This is God's will for all of us. If you're a disciple of Jesus, if you're a follower of Jesus, this is our rallying cry. Like whatever other specifics may be true about your life and where God leads you in your life, this is God's will for your life, wherever you are, to go and make disciples. And so maybe as you think about this, you wrestle with this, pray about this, maybe this means something pretty drastic. Maybe this means becoming a missionary in another country or another continent, or maybe it means stopping what you're doing and going into full-time ministry, becoming a pastor, doing ministry in a church or a nonprofit organization. Or maybe it means becoming a disciple maker of middle schoolers here at Oasis, or high schoolers or kids or young adults, becoming a discipler, a mentor for young people. Or maybe it means just using the relationships you have with your neighbors and inviting God to speak to you about what that could look like to disciple people like that. I mean, this can happen in any context, as a mom, a dad, a coach, playing pickleball, running the organization that you run, going to class. It could be literally anything. I love how this quote from William Carey, he's kind of known as the founder of modern missions. He said this. Said, expect great things from God, attempt great things for God. Expect great things from God and attempt great things for God. I love that. We can expect great things from God. We know that. That's a certainty. God has done great things, will continue to do great things. But we, as followers of Jesus Christ, we have the power of the Holy Spirit living in us. And so empowered by God's Spirit, let's attempt great things for God. And don't get caught up on the word great. Again, we don't have to necessarily think big and lofty and becoming famous type things. Great can be anything. Great can be how you raise your kids. Great can be how you act or react to your coworkers. It can be incorporating the way of Jesus into how you do business. It can be about living with integrity in front of your teammates, on the ball field, on your job site. Great can just be about stepping out in faith based on what you hear God speaking to you, how God might be leading you today or tomorrow, right? But when we clarify the preferred future, we base that on our wiring, our gifts, where you see God leading you in the next 5 years. It makes all the difference. So we clarify the vision. Step 2 is this: create the plan. Clarify the vision, then create the plan. Let's see what Joshua does here. Moving to chapter 2. Then Joshua secretly sent out 2 spies from the Israelite camp at Acacia Grove. He instructed them, scout out the land on the other side of the Jordan River, especially around Jericho, which was the border town. And so he sends out spies. Sound familiar? Right? But this time it's different. Joshua's not sending out the spies, and depends what they say, then maybe we'll go in or not. No, Joshua's like, we're sending them out to, scout out, to help create a plan, but we're going in for sure. We're going in to take this land. They're just gonna help us with step 2. They're gonna help us create the plan based on what they scout out. They've clarified the vision, right? They've created the plan, right? We got those 2 steps, right? And after they send out the scouts, that's what they do, right? And you can read the chapter for yourself. We don't have time to go into all of it, but read it for yourself. It's this, they come up with this amazing plan, right? And there's just this energy. You can just imagine the excitement as they're putting this plan together. It honestly reads kind of like fiction, but it's not. It's nonfiction because it's history. But they have this excitement because it's finally it's not just like hopes and dreams. They finally have a plan based on the vision that God has given them. And so my question for you is this: what are the steps for your preferred future? What does it look like to create a plan for you? What steps might you need to take? Is there someone that you need to talk to? Is there, someone to, some way to figure out, what's going to be required in order to accomplish this vision? What kind of strategy do I need to come up with? Maybe come up with a timeline, because so often, we move towards a goal and it can feel really frustrating. I'm never going to accomplish it, but a timeline allows you to have these wins to celebrate along the way. There's a great book called Atomic Habits, written by James Clear. I love what he says in this book. He says, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And systems, it's just another way of saying that the plan in place, right? The steps that you're going to take. Goals are great, but it's the steps that you're planning out. It's the system that you put in place that's really going to determine where you end up. Right, that's so true. We've all had goals, but we don't always achieve those goals. And this is a key factor as to why that happens. And so we've got the three steps. We've got clarify the vision, create the plan, and here's the third one: commit to the plan. Right? If you don't want to be like everybody who goes to the gym after New Year's for like 2 weeks and then quits going, that's this step right here. Right? You have to actually commit to the place. Commit to the plan. You got the plan in place, but you have to actually commit to it. And to help with this, remember what God said to Joshua. We already looked at this verse in chapter 1, verse 3. God said, I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Every place where you set your foot. And what's God saying here? He's saying that there's some action required by Joshua. Right? We can't just sit around waiting for God to accomplish the vision for us, right? Does God do some of the work? Does he do most of the work? Yeah, God adds his extra to our ordinary, right? He adds his super to our natural, right? But there's a team involvement. Both parties need to be taking steps toward the vision, right? You need to set your foot. That's true of Joshua, that's true of you, that's true of all of us in order to move toward the goal. Now let's see, Joshua chapter 3, verse 1. Early the next morning, Joshua and all the Israelites left Acacia Grove and arrived at the banks of the Jordan River, where they camped before crossing. Early the next morning, the plan starts to fall into place. Again, we don't have time to read the whole thing. I encourage you to do this. The book of Joshua chronicles this amazing event. And as you see here where it says they're in Acacia Grove, I've got a map here kind of like zoomed in a little bit, but this is kind of Canaan. This is the Mediterranean on the west, the desert on the south, Lebanon mountains in the west, and the Euphrates in the east, just like God described. But here they are right here. They're at Acacia Grove. This is the Jordan River. They're about to cross the Jordan toward Jericho. That was kind of hard to see, but this is the plan in place. This is step one. And again, you read the book of Joshua and you find out, spoiler alert, the Canaan conquest happens. They enter into the promised land. This is an incredible story where Joshua just stays the course. He keeps stepping and keeps trusting, keeps committing to the plan, taking steps, trusting God, committed to the plan, and they move from wandering to purpose through this plan here. Clarify the vision, create the plan, commit to the plan, and they're able to do it. And you and I too, you can have direction and live with intentionality in order to accomplish the big vision that God might have for your life. But in order for this to happen, I just want to reiterate one more thing that God said to Joshua. And we didn't look at this verse, but from chapter 1, verse 9, God says, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. In fact, you see words like this, phrases like this over and over again, where God repeats this to Joshua. Don't be afraid. I will be with you. Don't be discouraged. I'm going to go with you everywhere you go. Okay? I'm in this with you. God repeats this over and over again. Let me ask you again, what could you accomplish? If you believed that God was with you wherever you go, what could you accomplish? If you really believed deep down in your heart, if you had faith, if you had confidence that God would be with you. Yes, your life is going to have things that cause fear. There's going to be some doubt. but you can walk through those things with boldness and with courage, knowing that God is with you. Don't be like Moses, who allowed the fear to decide not to cause them to move forward. Don't be like Moses. Be like Joshua, who listened to the voice of God, who allowed God to lead him to this vision, lead him to this preferred future, to lead them into the promised land. Let me ask you this question. Is what you're living for a worthwhile thing to live for? When you think about purpose, you think about vision, is what you're living for. And I'm not talking about, what you might say you're living for, but like actually if you pull out your calendar, if you actually look at your priorities, if you actually look at how you spend your time, how you spend your money, how you spend your resources, what you're investing your time and energy in, is what you're living for a worthwhile thing to live for? I mean, what is really worth living for? What kind of vision have you received from God to make you wake up every day with this purpose, with this vision of what your life could look like? Now maybe you hear something like this and this feels a little bit overwhelming or maybe confusing, and if that's the case, I've done a bad job of communicating this, because the opposite of this should be true. Let me look, just one more verse here. Paul wrote to the Ephesians, he said this, "Now to him, this is God, who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us." When things feel overwhelming, when it seems like, I can't do that, that's because we've lost sight of the fact that we have a God who's with us, who is able to do immeasurably more, right? And it's not our power at work accomplishing this vision. It's his power that is at work within us. That is the key, right? So if it feels overwhelming, God can do immeasurably more than we could ever imagine. Applying a message like this today, this isn't adding something to your plate. This is kind of the opposite. This is like clearing things up, right? Vision clarifies our lives, right? Vision removes distractions. When we live with this kind of vision, right, it removes the distractions, and we realize, and I remind myself of this all the time, where I find myself like getting anxious about something or worried about something or angry, and I'm like, Darryl, what are you doing? Like, this doesn't matter. That person's opinion doesn't matter. And I have to reset the vision that God has for my life, and I realize this is the thing that matters. Keep your focus on what matters, and it removes the distraction, and it removes stress. It reduces anxiety and worry. That addiction that you're struggling with loses its power when your focus is on a bigger and better vision for your life, right? And it just clears up. You realize, my enemy is not my boss. That annoying person, that's not my enemy. The person who cut me off in traffic, this like earthly realm things, like there's a heavenly realm, there's an eternity to live for, right? That's the aim. It's in the heavenly realms. God has something so much bigger and better to focus on, right? All these things that cause sideways energy, they just go away as we live a more focused, less distracted life. Right? And maybe you've thought about something like this and like, man, it would be cool, like if I could do this, if I could take this step, if I could move in this direction, it feels like this might move my life to a preferred future. This might move my life to a better place, but I crunch some numbers, I calculate, I just don't think I have the ability to make that decision. But what if perhaps it actually, it doesn't make no sense to be able to make that decision, but it actually makes no sense to not be able to move in that direction in light of God's plan for your life, in light of a vision, this preferred future that God has for you. What if perhaps it makes no sense for you not to completely rearrange your life, drop everything that you're doing in order to figure out, how can I move in this direction? How can I take this step that God might want me to take? Let's expect great things from God. And let's attempt great things from God. Let's start our day on our knees and just say, God, your kingdom come, your will be done. Like Jesus taught us to pray. I want my day to be about you, about your kingdom, your will. And I encourage you, every day, or just try it once, try it today or tomorrow, and just say, God, why did you create me? God, what is your vision for my life? What would it look like for me to live with the most purpose? Because you created me on purpose, for a purpose. What is that purpose? God, why'd you make me? That's a prayer that God is going to answer for you. Let's expect great things from God and attempt great things for God. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you. Thank you for this truth, that we are your handiwork. We are created in Christ Jesus to do good works. Thank you for the truth. We were created on purpose for a purpose. God, thank you that it is you who can do immeasurably more than we could ever ask or imagine. God, whatever we could come up with, it would be cool if my life went in this direction. It would be cool if this happened. Whatever things we could ever come up with pale in comparison to what you are capable of doing, of what you long to do. You long for us to experience life with meaning and purpose, for us to be able to lay our heads on our pillow at the end of the day, feeling content, satisfied, knowing that we lived our lives with a vision that was just bigger than ourselves, bigger than what we could come up with. And God, I pray that would be true of us, that we wouldn't allow fear, doubt, worry, anxiety to get in the way of the big vision that you have for each and every one of us. God, would you honor that prayer? God, for every single person here, every single person watching online, would you reveal the answer to us? God, why did you make me? God, what is that vision? Would you show us that vision and give us the courage to move toward it? Amen.